Hello, fabulous third graders! Today we are going to subtract across zeros. A taxi company owns 300 taxis. There are 128 taxis on duty today. How many taxis are not on duty? Well, this requires a subtraction problem of 300 minus 128. That is the total number of taxis owned by the taxi company minus the number of taxis that are on duty today to give us the number of taxis that are not on duty. So remember, when I'm subtracting, I go to the very right in the ones column to subtract. But I find that I have 0 minus 8, so I have to ask myself, bottom bigger? Well, yes, 8 is greater than 0, so I have to borrow and regroup. Now, normally I would borrow from the tens column, but the tens column has 0. I can't borrow anything from 0, so I have to go all the way to the hundreds column. This is what we mean by subtracting across the zeros. So I went to the tens column, I couldn't borrow anything, I moved to the hundreds column, I borrow 1 from the hundreds column, which leaves me with 2, because 1 less than 3 is 2. Now, when we borrow, the one that we borrow always needs to come to the very next column to the right. So I can't give that 100 to the ones column. I have to give that 1 to the tens column. So now my tens column, instead of being 0, is 10. Well, now I can borrow. I can borrow 1 from that 10 to get 9, and that 1 goes to the next column of the ones column. So now in the ones column, instead of a 0, I have 10 ones. So 10 minus 8 equals 2. That's a subtraction fact that I know. So now in my tens column, because I borrowed, I have 9 minus 2. Now that's another subtraction fact that I know, and that is 7. Finally, the hundreds column, we have 2 minus 1, and that equals 1. So my answer is 172 taxis are not on duty. But let's check our work. Remember, if I can subtract going down, I can add going up. So I'm going to add 172 plus 128 in the hopes that I get 300. Let's check it out. 2 plus 8 equals 10. Write my 0, carry my 1. 1 plus 7 plus 2 equals 10. Write my 0, carry my 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. And yes, I get 300, which is exactly the number I needed, and so I know that my work is correct. Now, what if I wanted to subtract across zeros with 4-digit numbers? Let's check this one out. 4,302 minus 1,155. So remember, we're going to start in the ones column, and I have 2 minus 5. Bottom bigger? Yep, 5 is greater than 2. So I need to borrow and regroup. But when I go to the tens column, I find that I have 0, and I can't borrow anything from 0. So now I have to go to the hundreds column. So I'm going to borrow 1 from that 3 in the hundreds column, and I'm left with 2. That 1 that I borrowed has to come to the tens column. Well, now instead of 0, I have 10 in the tens column. So I'm going to borrow 1 from that 10, and I'm left with 9. And that 1 that I borrowed comes over to the ones column, and instead of 2 ones, I now have 12 ones. So 12 minus 5 equals 7. Going to the tens column, 9 minus 5 equals 4. Going to the hundreds column, 2 minus 1 equals 1. And finally, in our thousands column, we have 4 minus 1 equals 3. So my answer is 3,147. But let's check that with addition. Remember, if I can subtract going down, I can add going up. So 3,147 plus 1,155. And if we did our work correctly, we should get 4,302. Let's check it out. 7 plus 5 equals 12. Write my 2, carry my 1. 1 plus 4 plus 5 equals 10. Write my 0, carry my 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. And finally, 3 plus 1 equals 4. So 4,302 is the answer I wanted to get, and so I know that my work is correct. Now remember, if you don't get that number, that means you need to go back and check your work to make sure that you subtracted or even added correctly. All right, let's try some on your own.